Payroll setup in QuickBooks. We're going to go through the initial process that's necessary in order to process payroll within QuickBooks. We're going to activate payroll and configure the payroll preferences. We're going to set up payroll in the chart of accounts. We're going to enable a data file for payroll processing. We're going to use the interview to add payroll items and defaults and records, etc. And we're going to understand the scenes, the accounting behind the scenes, the debit, the credits, all that wonderful stuff that we have been trained to do. We're going to add payroll items in our payroll item list. We're going to edit payroll items, and we're going to add or release, deactivate, and activate employees. There are a number of choices within the payroll system. Manual payroll, basic payroll, enhanced, intuitive payroll, and assisted payroll. Well, again, you need quite a bit of information to set up payroll, so let's get started. You need to gather information about each employee. Generally, a W-4 will give you that information, but you may need other things. You want to go into preference and activate the payroll function. Allow the system to recognize payroll and to process with the proper tax accounts, tax tables, etc. You're going to set up payroll accounts if you don't have them already. You're going to enable payroll file to process, and you're going to go through the interview process, and it tells you step by step how to do that. So you're going to add payroll items, and you're going to edit payroll, verify it, and then obviously set up the year-to-date information, mid-year information, so that you can pay the liability payments, and then you can approve. So in the preferences section, you go to edit, and you're going to go down to payroll. You're going to enhance. You're going to enable payroll, as you can see here. Looking at the options shown on this screen, that should be the items that should be on your screen when you're enabling or activating payroll. Now, the accounts may already be added, but if they're not, you can see up on below, you'll see there's one general account, and then there are subcategories. This is very, very important because we want these accounts to show up together on the chart of accounts, but you also want them to be grouped together in your trial balance as well as your general ledger, and also when you present your financial reports. So if they're not set up this way, you can set them up as sub-accounts for the main payroll liabilities account. The payroll expense accounts are the same logic. We want to have one big account, but then we want to have several accounts that flow underneath it. It really keeps the organization of the payroll, keeps them uniform, and it also eases in reporting when you're doing financial reports, etc. Now, in the item list, again, the item list has different things that we can track. In this case, we're going to track items relating specifically to payroll, and you can see a list of those in front of you. So let's go into the payroll setup process. It's an interview, very much like when you interviewed when you set up the new company on the company file. This is going to be asking you various questions that you'll need to answer, and based on the answer, it will set up the payroll. Medical insurance, obviously, for most individuals, we pay a portion of our health insurance, and another portion is paid by the company. This is also true in QuickBooks. It allows you to have that discretion. Sometimes insurance is paid 100% by the employee or 50-50, but nevertheless, you have the option of either having insurance or not having it, or splitting the cost between the two. And when you go into the interview, it's gonna prompt you to set up insurance benefits. And on your screen here, you can just see what the options you have available. It's quite extensive. You can have health insurance, you can have dental, you can have none. You can have group life insurance, or you can have none. It all depends on you and with your company. Also, it has these employee deductions for company 401k and its match. And again, if you decide not to have employee 401k, you could just say no. But it does give you options that you'll need to determine what kind of deductions that will be taken from an employee's paycheck. And as it says here, the interview process will take you through creating items to track and pay sick or vacation pay. And most people do get paid time off. Therefore, we may need to put some information in so that the system can automatically track it for you. You don't have to do a separate spreadsheet, as has been in the past when tracking paid leave. And again, using the interview process, it does ask you what your accrual rate is and all of that, so that you can set up the payroll information. Here we're just this is just a sheet showing you how to set up employees, the kind of information that's needed, which is generally on the W-4 form or some other form that has all employee pertinent information. Here you can see just where you stand with the interview process. You can always get out and leave and come back later, or you can continue through the question and answers. And it's very, very similar to any other type of interview, just asking you questions that are necessary for you to have a complete set of a payroll setup. Setup. This includes tax information, disability, if it's applicable, and all other taxes that will be withheld from an employee's check. Year-to-date amounts will not be necessary if this is the first time you're paying an employee, but if you are not paying an employee for the first time, you'll need to set up that information. Therefore, your W-2s will be correct, and your year-end tax reports will be correct as well. In those fields, you can update detailed information about employees. And again, the more information you put into QuickBooks, the better it is, because you can download this information to Excel, track it in QuickBooks, generate very, very specific type of reports which you can customize. So it's never a bad thing to put more information in QuickBooks. Default settings. You can also change default settings. Obviously, it's going to set up for new employees and to be paid, but you can say when they get paid, how often they get paid, the accrual rate that each employee is entitled to for their leave balances, etc. You really can change these settings to be what you want, or you can accept them. And again, behind the scenes, it's just telling you that payroll processing does create an expense, a payroll expense or payroll tax expense for the employer, but it also sets up the accruals for the liability that they ultimately will pay and the withholding that is made from each paycheck. So the payroll items is going to be their different payment items, which is wages, salary, wage, hourly, commission, and bonus. And you might be able to, and you may add other items that you feel are necessary for tracking your payroll. You have your deductions, etc. And you want to track those deductions. You don't want them lumped in one account. You want to be able to determine how much you paid or how much was deducted for health insurance, 401k, etc., etc. And you want to separate the deductions from the contributions that are made on behalf of the employee in the case of 401k. Payroll items also include the taxes, and that includes federal and state. Some states will require unemployment to be taken out, and still others may require state disability taken out. But this is not always true, and if it's not applicable in your case, you just say no and you go forward. Any other taxes that are taken out. Now, if you may have other items that you want to add, just note that the interview process is not all-inclusive. If you need to add more items, you can do so quite easily from the edit menu and add list, or the payroll menu, and you just add a new item to your list. If an employee no longer is no longer being paid, you can release those employees and when you run your payroll. And that's obviously the employee center, which looks very much like the customer center, has everything you need on that one screen. And within that same center, you can actually release an employee very, very painlessly. Deactivating employees is also another item, and it removes them from the list, but it doesn't delete them from your company file. That's important because when you're talking about employees, you're going to need them on your books until the end of the year, at the very least, simply because year-end reports will include those individuals, provided that you've paid them. Now, this is just a contact list, and again, it's like any other list. Just shows you some pertinent information on the employees in the case of who they are, their social, telephone number and address, and possibly their gender. Reports like this are used for employee reporting for other government agencies that may require information on new hires, etc. So in essence, you're activating your payroll. You're allowing the system to work. Using configuring your payroll process, you are going to modify your chart of accounts to ensure that all the payroll accounts are necessary for payment and withholding of your payroll taxes are set up properly. And you're going to enable file for payroll processing. You'll use the payroll setup interview to make sure you add items, vendors, employee defaults, records, and other year-to-date information. But remember, you can always go back and make changes. This is just a step in an organized way to set up your payroll and making certain that you don't miss any key information prior to processing your payroll. Adding new employees, deactivating employees, and releasing employees all are another part of the payroll process, and it's important. and you can do that within the payroll setup system. This is the end of our mini lecture on payroll setup. As before, any questions that you might have, please don't hesitate to post them in the Q&A section of the discussion board, and we will address them together. Thank you for listening.